Scorpio, if this found you today, it is because some quiet, hidden part of you is already standing at the edge of a doorway, feeling that something cannot continue the way it has been. And as we move toward December 13th, that feeling is not your imagination. It is the soul-deep sense that God is gently but firmly saying, "Enough, my child, this chapter cannot follow you where you are going." You may not be able to explain it to anyone. You may not have the perfect words for it, but inside your chest there has been a weight, a tiredness in your bones, an invisible exhaustion that no amount of sleep seems to touch, as if you have been carrying a life that no longer truly belongs to you, a version of yourself held together by duty, fear, survival, and old promises you made when you didn't yet know your own worth. Perhaps you've been waking up with a knot in your stomach, going through your day as if on autopilot, showing up for everyone else while a quieter, more honest part of you whispers, "This cannot be all there is for me." Maybe you've been feeling more emotional than usual, more sensitive to noise, criticism, or demands, more easily overwhelmed by the smallest things, and you've wondered, "What's wrong with me?" Scorpio, I want you to hear this clearly. There is nothing wrong with you. The heaviness you feel is not a defect. It is evidence that your soul has outgrown the space it's been trapped in. December 13th does not arrive to punish you. It comes as a spiritual turning point, a holy pause where heaven leans close and rearranges what you can no longer rearrange on your own. Around this time, you may notice three very specific inner movements, like tides shifting beneath the surface of your life. The first is that fog of sadness that doesn't quite have a name, the ache that appears even on days when nothing bad has happened. You might find yourself wanting to cry without knowing why, answering messages more slowly, staring at your phone with no desire to talk, or feeling detached in conversations that used to energize you. This is your emotional body speaking in its own language, telling you that you have swallowed too many feelings, pretended to be okay for too long, and worn strength like armor instead of allowing it to be softness. God is not asking you to diagnose every feeling or force an explanation for every tear. God is inviting you to stop running from what hurts and sit beside it like a friend sits beside another friend in silence. When you stop fighting the sadness and simply say, "I see you, I feel you, I'm not going to abandon you this time," something begins to loosen, like a tight knot slowly unwinding in your chest. That is the beginning of the end of this chapter. Not when everything outside you changes, but when you stop treating your pain like a problem and start honoring it as a teacher. The second movement is your instinct to retreat. Scorpio, you know how to disappear. You know how to answer with shorter messages, how to laugh while hiding your true thoughts, how to exit the room emotionally while your body remains. You've done this to survive, to protect yourself from people who judged your depth, used your loyalty, or twisted your vulnerability into a weapon. And there are times when pulling back is holy, when God Himself pulls you away from noise to heal you in private. But as December 13th approaches, you are being asked to notice when your withdrawal is no longer protection, but habit. When you say, "I'm fine," while every part of you is screaming, "I am not fine." When you ghost your own needs, your own truth, your own heart. God is not calling you out to shame you. God is calling you back so you stop treating isolation as the only safe place. There are souls being prepared to meet you with gentleness, to hear you with no judgment, to hold space for your story without trying to fix you. Your next season of healing will not happen in complete isolation. It will also happen in the small, brave moments when you let someone see the real you and stay. So as the urge to vanish rises, ask yourself softly, am I protecting my peace, or am I hiding from being truly known? The third movement is subtle but powerful. A growing mistrust, a quiet suspicion that hums in the background of everything. You may find yourself doubting people's motives, even when they haven't harmed you, questioning whether opportunities are traps, wondering if good news is too good to be true, or worrying that somehow you are still failing, still behind, still not where you should be. Scorpio, your intuition is a sacred gift, and you have learned the hard way to listen to it. You are not wrong for being cautious. But there is a difference between discernment and living in constant expectation of betrayal. God is inviting you now to turn your mistrust into a doorway for deeper honesty. Instead of silently overthinking, you are being guided to ask real questions, to say, I need more time, or I need clarity, or this doesn't feel right to me. Your doubt is not your enemy. It is a messenger that says, something here needs more light. But if you never shine that light, through communication, prayer, reflection, the mistrust becomes a wall that locks you away from joy, connection, and answered prayers. December 13th is a turning point because it marks a shift from silently enduring your inner storms to consciously partnering with God in calming them. This is not the day everything magically becomes perfect. It is the day heaven stamps a quiet decree over your life. This pattern ends here. Think of the last few months as a spiritual tension point where everything unresolved, unspoken, and unhealed began circling closer to the surface. Old memories you thought you were over may have returned through dreams, songs, random triggers, or conversations. Fears about being abandoned, betrayed, misunderstood, or used may have grown louder. You may have felt like you were being pulled backward emotionally, even as you were trying to move forward. Scorpio, this is not regression. This is revelation. God is showing you exactly what cannot follow you into the next chapter, the relationships where you shrink yourself to be tolerated, the habits that numb you instead of nourish you, the internal story that says you must carry everything alone because no one will show up for you. As December 13th approaches, imagine a divine hand slowly closing the pages of a book that has taken you years to read. A book filled with struggle, survival, self-sacrifice, and quiet suffering. You are not being asked to deny that story or hate it. You are being invited to recognize that the chapter of being defined by your pain is ending. You have learned what you needed to learn from this season. You have proven that you can endure, hold, and carry far more than anyone realized. Now God is asking you a different question. Will you allow yourself to live differently once I take some of this weight off your shoulders? On and around December 13th, you may notice outer events that mirror this inner ending. A conversation that finally gives you closure, a door that shuts unexpectedly, a job, a connection, a plan, and at first feels like loss but quietly brings you relief. A sudden realization that you cannot keep betraying your body, your sleep, your mental health just to keep everything else running. Something will click, not in a dramatic explosion, but in a firm, clear inner no more. You may cry. You may feel strangely empty for a moment, like you've set down a heavy backpack after years of walking with it. That emptiness is not abandonment. It is space. Space for God to place something new in your hands. Space for your own desires to be heard. Space for your heart to stretch after being curled up in self-protection for so long. This turning point is not about you suddenly becoming a different person in one night. It is about you deciding that your softness is worth protecting, your peace is worth prioritizing, and your future is worth choosing with intention, not out of fear. From this point forward, you will be asked to practice a gentler kind of courage, the bravery to rest when your mind screams at you to power through, the bravery to say, "I don't know yet, I need time," the bravery to tell the truth about what you feel instead of performing the version of yourself you think others will love more. God is not asking you to be strong in the old way. The clenched jaw, the swallowed tears, the exhausted smile. God is teaching you a new strength, the strength of being honest, the strength of standing still, the strength of saying, "I matter too." You are not being punished, you are being recalibrated. Your worth is not on trial. Your destiny is not in danger. Something bigger than your fear is rearranging the path beneath your feet. And as this realignment unfolds, you will notice something quietly miraculous. You start to treat yourself with the kind of tenderness you always wished others would give you. You begin talking to yourself like someone you want to protect, not someone you are disappointed in. You start to realize that healing has been happening in the background all along. In every tear you allowed, in every boundary you set, in every tiny act of self-respect no one else saw. This is where the old chapter ends, not with dramatic fireworks, but with a radical, holy shift in how you hold yourself. You stop seeing yourself as a problem to fix and start recognizing yourself as a soul God has been carefully, patiently mending. There is something very important to remember here, Scorpio. This message is not a rigid prediction carved into stone, not a guarantee that a specific date will magically erase all struggle from your life. Think of it instead as a sacred mirror, a symbolic story about the energies of this season, a spiritual reflection offered to the hearts that resonate with it. If these words touch something true inside you, let them be guidance, not a cage. Keep the parts that feel like they were written for you, and let the rest flow past, like clouds across the sky, because no single reading can define your entire journey, and no human voice can replace the quiet, steady wisdom of God speaking directly to your heart. You always have choice. You always have agency, and your future is shaped not only by energies and timing, but by the decisions you make with the light you have. This is less about what December 13th does to you, and more about how you choose to meet the moment. Will you keep apologizing for your emotions, or will you finally honor them as sacred? Will you keep chasing acceptance in places that drain you, or will you wait for those who can love the real you? Will you continue to wear yourself down in the name of being useful, or will you dare to believe that you are loved by God simply because you exist? The turning point is not just a day on the calendar, it is a shift in posture, from bracing against life to opening your hands to it. So as you move toward this threshold, allow yourself to slow down. Notice what your body has been trying to say. Notice which conversations leave you hollow and which ones leave you feeling seen. Notice where you are clenching, forcing, pretending, and notice where you feel a quiet yes rising, even if it scares you. Talk to God the way you would talk to a friend in the dark. You don't need perfect prayers, you need honest ones. Say, if you are really ending this chapter for me, help me let go. Help me not run back to what hurt me just because it's familiar. Help me trust that what you have next is not another battlefield, but a gentler field where I can finally breathe. You are not too late, you are not too broken, you are not too complicated for peace. There are versions of you that only God has seen, and this season is about slowly, lovingly bringing that truer self forward. So Scorpio, as December 13th rises on the horizon, let this be your quiet agreement with heaven. The old story of carrying everything alone ends here. The story of constantly doubting your worth ends here. The story of mistaking numbness for strength ends here. You are allowed to step into a softer, more honest way of living, one where your heart is not an afterthought, but a sanctuary. May this message be a reminder, not a rule, a guiding light, not a chain. If it resonates, let it deepen your trust in the God who has walked beside you in every hidden tear and every silent night. If it doesn't, bless it and release it. Either way, your journey is sacred, your pace is holy, and you are far more held than you know. The chapter of pure struggle is closing, Scorpio. The page is turning, and even if your hands are trembling, you are ready.